here today. Not often that I get to talk about how the county actually has more money than it usually does, which is the situation we're currently in. Doesn't mean it can all go in the same places or places we necessarily want it to go, but I do think we're going to be able to have a conversation with our leadership in the county, and I hope take care of what are near and dear to me, which is our 501c3 and charity organizations, having been a board member of the United Way and of Youth Services in Glenbrook. I really do feel that I understand your issues, I understand your pain, and we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something kind of significant, and we need to make sure we get it right. So that is my sum total of my initial presentation. I just wanted to talk about, to actually pass it over to our guest presenter for today's discussion, which is Ms. Arteaga. She works for the National Partnership for New Americans, NPNA, which is a key county partner in the creation and implementation of the Cook County Recovery Initiative. So she can give you an idea of what we've done and what the future holds. So Ms. Arteaga, take it away.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and good afternoon, everybody. Good to be on the call with you here. As Commissioner said, my name is Magali Arteaga. I am the Programs and Training Manager with the National Partnership for New Americans, or short for NPNA. We are a national organization, but our headquarters, our main offices are here located in Chicago, in the heart of Pilsen. So good to be on the call with you. Liz, I don't know, do we want to share the slides or you want me to share them?
I'm happy to share them for you. That way you can just enjoy your presentation.
Thank you so much, Liz. Great, and I promise not to take up too much time here. So kind of just want to introduce ourselves, our role through the National Partnership for New Americans. I am joined by my colleague, Sarah Misik, which is our Programs Director at the National Partnership for New Americans, but she'll introduce herself shortly. Both her and I are partners in crime, and we lead a lot of our programs work through our NPNA and working very closely with our organizations across the country. Next slide, please. So a little bit about NPNA for those of you that have not heard of us. We are a multi-ethnic, multiracial organization with a partnership of over 41 of the largest immigrant and refugee nonprofit organizations, primarily coalitions, and we are in 37 states. A lot of the organizations are very much like our members, the Resurrection Project, which many of you may know of here in the city of Chicago. They are our Illinois partner. Very proud to say that we work very closely with the Resurrection Project, but very much of our organizations across the country are organizations such as like the Resurrection Project. Our organization works to pursue immigrant and inclusive policy campaigns across programs at the local, state, and federal level. And also NPNA is a co-coordinator of the Cities for Citizenship Network, which is a coalition of over 100 cities and counties. Cook County, Illinois being one of our county partners through the Cities for Citizenship effort. And so Cities for Citizenship is a coalition, a network of cities and counties working together to promote citizenship. With the pandemic last year, a lot of our work and our conversation focused around the work that cities and counties were doing around recovery and relief initiatives. So definitely, we continue to do citizenship work, but because of the pandemic and the role that cities and counties were taking on at the local level, this is an opportunity to hear more about what more can we do with our nonprofits, with our communities and our families. So the organization, so the network is also a program that lives under the National Partnership of New Americans' work. Next slide, please. Our partnership with Cook County, the NPNA was the nonprofit partner of the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative, which began in March of 2020. So it was us focusing and making sure that nonprofits in the Cook County, suburban Cook County area had the resources around COVID-19. So we worked very closely with small businesses and nonprofits to make sure that they had access and information that came through the federal, state, and local level, creating resources all around for COVID-19. NPNA's role was really essential and really key in providing that critical technical assistance and outreach and support to suburban Cook County nonprofits and residents and also small businesses. We worked very closely with the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition, the Illinois Restaurant Association, but our role through NPNA was really to provide that technical assistance, that one-on-one with the nonprofits in Cook County area. Next slide, please. And some of the technical assistance examples that we provided, and again, this was specifically with one-on-one with the organizations in the Cook County area, was providing information, was providing webinars and one-on-ones on what was a paycheck protection program, right? The basic 101 of PPP. We helped organizations and nonprofits educate them on PPP, how to apply, where to apply, how to help them fill out the application, connecting them to SBA lender. So there was definitely a lot of TA there. In addition to providing more information as well and webinars around the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is the EIDL. We provided information and webinars and resources around workforce development opportunities. We had a really good webinar with the Chicago Cooks Workforce Partnership and elevating the partnerships and the work that they were doing. Making sure that all of our resources, that technical assistance and information that we provided was also language access, making sure that we had them in various languages. Not only, did we provide very much information and technical assistance around PPP, but also the vaccine rollout was big for us. Making sure that nonprofits and organizations had the information available on where to access the vaccine, where to go to, who to partner with, what was needed. This was really big because in order for us to start to get back into the economic recovery phase, vaccines are really key for our employees and our employers in Cook County, small businesses and nonprofits, making sure that they feel comfortable getting back into the workforce space. Providing information around the stimulus payments for all the residents. We provided a lot of outreach, a lot of resources and materials through our email listserv, which was over 5,000. Our listserv was over 5,000 people. We provided weekly updates to our nonprofits and small businesses, and also worked very closely with the Cook County team to make sure that any programs, any loans, any grants that they rolled out was something that we provided information to our constituents, to our nonprofits and small businesses, especially around housing and rental assistance. Next slide, please. And NPNA has been really key in providing resources and toolkits. Here is it, and hopefully my colleague Sarah can just drop in the link for this resource toolkit here that we created in partnership with cities and counties across the country. And this was a toolkit that was really focused on the economic recovery and equity toolkit. So we talked about strategies around economic relief and recovery programs and opportunities that were implemented across the country, strategies on how to revitalize immigrant small businesses and nonprofits across the country, and also workforce development strategies. So if you all have an opportunity to take a look at this toolkit, you'll see that it was in collaboration not only with the Cook County and the Cook County Community Recovery Initiative, which really became a program, an initiative as an example to be able to implement and use across the country. So we're really proud to be have been part of the Cook County Recovery Initiative and working closely with the Cook County, because it's really been an example that can be replicated in various cities and counties across the country. Next slide, please. And not only did we do work here locally in Cook County, Illinois, but I'll turn it over to my colleague Sarah, who will now talk about more of the national role that we are leading in supporting our nonprofit organizations to advocate for American Rescue Plan funds. So Sarah, take it away.
Thanks, Magali. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Misek. I'm Director of Programs with NPNA. I know this conversation is about American Rescue Plan, so we're going to get into this. I'm going to speak briefly and definitely want enough time to hear from all of you all that are leading the work in your nonprofits with communities across the district. Quickly, just want to acknowledge the commissioner and the team for pulling this together. This is exactly what all districts should be doing right now. As the commissioner said, this funding is really unprecedented, and it's a great opportunity to think big and think about equity and innovation and how this funding can be used in new ways. And you all are the experts in figuring out how to do that. But there are some resources that we wanted to name. So we did a member briefing across our network a couple weeks ago. I will share a toolkit that we pulled together that could be helpful when you're looking at how these funds break down. I think we may get into this more on this webinar, but this toolkit that I just linked really lays out, the funding that is available across the country, what it looks like locally. There's some great maps that you can get really granular into how this funding looks. I'll put this map in the link as well, in the chat as well. And Magali mentioned, we're an organization that works with immigrant serving organizations, but we know that pandemic has impacted all communities, and issues tied to housing, tied to access to food, access to language access, just so many, these issues are cross-cutting in all communities. So I'm definitely seeing how this funding can be used for everybody that's been impacted by the pandemic. So this funding or this toolkit is walks, we put it together to help our organizations kind of walk through what's available, and also make the case for some programs that may be of interest when we're thinking about how these funds could be used, whether it's essential worker funds, direct assistance, financial assistance for families that still maybe hit and feeling the impacts of the pandemic. Language access initiatives, workforce development programs are just some. Through our network, through our Cities for Citizenship initiative, we're seeing all these great ideas come out of how these funds are used. But just, starting with these conversations like y'all are having now is a great start as these decisions are being made quickly. And so getting at the table is really important. Another thing that nonprofits we're seeing are pulled together is their own campaigns to advocate for funds. One example out of Los Angeles is Immigrants Are LA and a Just Recovery for All. So we can link this in, but this is just an example of how, some outline some requests for how this funding can be used. I'll just stop there. I don't want to take any more time because I know this is a listening session, so I want to make sure there's enough time for folks to weigh in. Magali, anything to add?
No, nothing to add. I think just just really quickly I just want to also congratulate, this team here. And it's really important to really have these conversations. And, again, going back to how Cook County is an example that we can replicate across the country, thankful to, making sure that our voices are heard, and especially for nonprofits, making sure that they have a seat at the table.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Magali and Sarah, for this information. It has been one of the positives of this whole experience is the number of partners we've been able to find through Cook County, both non-governmental entities and governmental entities. We have tried to work together. It has been a team effort, and it continues. I also think, I've actually been in contact with one of the LA County supervisors on a number of different things that Los Angeles has been putting out that we have duplicated or have put in our own spin on. So we are coordinating with kind of like-minded counties, particularly the largest county in the country, and then the second largest, which is Los Angeles and Cook. So I think we're going to save questions, just not to mess up things, Liz, too much, but I think we're going to save questions till after my next little section, and then we can take them all at the same time, if that sounds okay with everybody. So why don't we go to the slides that I'm going to be presenting, which is going to be kind of a brief history of where we have been and then where we're going to go in our recovery efforts. So that was a picture of me, in case you're wondering. So Cook County has started with the CARES Act funding, and then we tried to make sure that we had the ability to address both small business needs and other emergency aspects, including some partnerships with philanthropy and other emergency funding resources. And, you know, again, what we've tried to do, and I think the President Preckwinkle has made a very significant commitment to, is the concept of underserved and under-resourced communities and using a regional approach to everything we do. We're also trying to do this kind of in a holistic way, in that we're trying to coordinate with our government bodies, with our not-for-profits, and with our business community. And what is going to happen after this town hall or listening session is we're going to be putting together a document that we're going to present to the powers that be in the county as to what our recommendations are, what the needs are, and then what the recommendations are of our particular area as to the distribution of the funds, which are now for the ARP funds are in excess of $1 billion. It just got pushed up a little bit. So next slide talks a little bit about the Social Vulnerability Index. And one thing I get a lot of during many conversations I have sometimes with my co-commissioners and people who work for the county is that they feel like, you know, all of the northern and northwest suburbs are Winnetka, and they're not. And I know Mayor Gallo is on this call. He certainly understands this in Rolling Meadows. We do have socially vulnerable areas. We have pockets of need that are substantial, and they exist in the north and northwest suburbs as well as they do south and west. So it is important for us to understand that, you know, the President's commitment and my commitment is to address those hardest hit areas, particularly those which were overly impacted by COVID-19 due to either disparities in healthcare, the jobs you had because you couldn't take time off or you couldn't work from home, all those kinds of things. That has to be an emphasis, and we did that in the CARES distribution. We're going to try and continue to do that as we address the ARP funding. You can go to the next slide. So Cook County had CARES Act spending of about $480 million. This shows you generally what we spent it on. And again, there was a substantial amount of small business assistance along with housing support, which has been a big part of what I've been trying to do as we've tried to figure out what's going to happen, not just now, but then going forward when people finally are going to be evicted and their mortgages are going to foreclose. That's another thing we got from Los Angeles, was to put together what's called the CLAD initiative, which is a way to get representation to poorer people who cannot afford a lawyer. So they're going to be able to negotiate and to navigate the circuit court when there are actions filed against so many people who probably can't afford their rent or their mortgage, and, you know, to avoid homelessness, which is our first and primary goal. You can go to the next slide. So there were a number of economic development partnerships that we developed through the CARES Act funding that includes shelter assistance, housing stability, food security. We helped the food pantries. We also gave cash to certain individuals, and then we did put together both the rental assistance, mortgage assistance, that was actual cash that went to those individuals and to pay mortgages and for rent. And then we have put in place the Cook County Legal Aid and for Housing and Debt initiative, which you know, I was part of as the committee member, and we now have, I think, a goal to making sure everyone is at least can enforce their legal rights in the circuit court system. We've also been focused on workforce training. Chicago Workforce Partnership and others are going to be a big part of getting us out of the economic problems that we've had to date, and we're going to continue working on that as well. You can go to the next slide. So the equity investments, as you can see, now, you know, there are two things that we were talking about. One is the equity commitment of the President, which involved funding from the county, and then there was CARES Act funding, and now there's ARP funding. So a lot of this was a commitment made to try to address inequities within the Cook County system in healthcare, justice, and economics. That is kind of separate and apart from what we're talking about with further financial activities and resources that the federal government has given us in excess of $1 billion. And it should also keep in mind that the city of Chicago is getting a direct allocation of about $2 billion. So my emphasis is going to be that we need to focus on, you know, the suburbs getting a fair share of the additional funding. And you can go to the next slide. The $100 million that was approved by the county board is designed, and this is a long slide, but I just want to let you know that there are a lot of things that we try to do through the county's policy roadmap to address equity funding in a number of different areas, but also to make sure that we have investments that are going to pay dividends down the road, which will help in job training, investing in mental and physical health, economic justice, infrastructure, all those things that show a long-term benefit rather than just kind of spending the money as a one-time thing and then not having anything to show for it 2 or 3 years down the road. And you can go to the next slide. So let's talk about the American Rescue Plan. It's $130.2 billion has been earmarked for local fiscal recovery, $65.1 billion for direct aid to counties, and we are now scheduled to receive, I think, $1.6 billion from the federal government in, I believe, 2 tranches. One very soon, if we haven't gotten it already, and then another later on. You can go to the next slide. Now, unlike in prior allocations, this time we're going to have funding directly from the federal government to our municipalities. As you can see, there is a substantial amount of money going to our municipalities. These are the ones, the primary municipal governments in my district. Every municipality is getting an allocation that will make it easier for us to leverage this funding, both at the local level and then more in a macro level at the county. My goal is also to talk to these individual communities. The idea being we could do some kind of matching funds. If they could put up some of this money for certain purposes, the county may be able to match with rescue plan funding. I think there's a lot of ways we can do this, but I do think that there is a method by which we can kind of work together with our municipalities, many of whom I know quite well now, that we can be able to maximize our funding and do the most good with the finite amount of resources we're getting in this one-time method. You can go to the next slide. So what I'm hoping to do is to, as I've indicated, I'm going to put together a report to the county as to what our goal is. And I think what I'm trying to figure out is the best way to sell everything we're going to do going forward. And it's interesting to me that I've talked to the chief financial officer of the county. I've said we need to have measurable and significant commitments to our local businesses and local nonprofits, along with some entities like our park districts and our libraries that didn't get direct funding. So there's a lot of need, but there's also a lot of resources. I think that there's ways that we can try and figure out ways to make that positive for all of our groups and every single entity that saw a significant drop, and I think that's every one of them, in their ability to fundraise, to raise money, to be able to sustain the operations that they have through this difficult time. So that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm a small business owner myself. I've been on not-for-profit boards. I know the challenges. That's why I feel I can speak to this as actively as anyone on the Cook County board, and also that I can then try and make it as urgent as possible to make sure we take care of those groups and entities that most deserve some of the resources that we're getting. Again, I don't think the federal government's going to give us $1 billion again anytime soon, so we better get this right. So that's my contact information. We're all over social media, so feel free to obviously reach out to us. But at this point, I think what we want to do is to listen to what your concerns and suggestions might be, both as to our friends at NPNA and for the county, and whatever else we need to do to communicate to President Preckwinkle, to fellow commissioners, and to the financial leadership of the county what we need to do with this funding.